everybody, welcome to this podcast, which is really a fantastic project of love. We at the Latino Donor Collaborative are so excited to do this. We believe that leadership is important, but we believe that the most important part is people that use their leadership to be able to actually make a difference. So we are very excited to have our guest today. I'll tell you a little bit about it. He is not only using his voice for everything that we care for, but he does it in English and in Spanish. So that's even better, right? He has two different audiences that definitely need it. Let me tell you a little bit about Chris Cabezas. And maybe you guys already know, but I'm going to still say it for those of you that haven't been privileged enough to follow him. And please follow him. He's very, very active in social media, especially TikTok. He has thousands and thousands and thousands of followers. And it is important because you'll see what he does with that, which is really amazing. Chris is a bilingual Emmy Award winning on-air journalist. And I'll tell you a little bit of what he's been doing lately, which is really important. But he works a lot with NBC Universal's Telemundo, and he works also with Televisa in Los Angeles. 18 years of broadcast experience, which is amazing. He looks really young, so he must have started when he was like 8 or 9. But he does have 18 years of experience. And then with his incredible digital presence that I just mentioned, he has millions of views, millions of likes, and he combines this rigor of journalism, but also with this resonating cultural storytelling that is so important. I love getting my news from Chris, and especially from his social media part, because I not only get the news, but I get a lot of the cultural like the impact that means, right, in our community, in our economy, in our city. We are so excited to have you.
Thank you, Ana. Very sweet, everything you said. I love it. Very honored to be here and to know you and to work with you many times already. I love that.
Yeah.
Y gracias. I didn't even know it had been 18 years already. Who's keeping count?
Somebody here in our staff made the math. I actually don't love that math in my case, but I tell you, it brings reputation with it.
Thank you. Yeah. Wow. It's amazing. Thank you.
But before we start, could you introduce yourself? Like I said, the generals and what I see from outside, but tell us about you. Tell us about, why do you do this work? How did you get so important? Quite frankly, how did your voice become so impactful? Tell us what it's not on your resume.
I always grew up with, being exposed to both English speakers and Spanish speakers, to the Mexican culture, Latinos, but also the American and pretty much the diversity that the United States is, right? Because I grew up on the border of San Diego and visiting Tijuana all the time. My family lives there. And so I didn't know about a career that I would be able to work with both communities, like an American and Mexican community. I actually studied political science, but I got into journalism right after college. And I fell in love with it, the power of communication, the power of the media. And so I obviously grew up watching Latino channels, Univision, Telemundo. And so it was a dream to go, work there. I started right when everything started changing, this evolution that we've seen with social media and all of that.
You're a fabulous bridge between those two.
Yeah, literally. I'm the bridge because, I started noticing it's hard to say it, but the decay of television, less audience, more people are on their phones just consuming information that way. I also at the same time started realizing that news that we watch on TV is mostly, or traditionally it has been mostly, negative stories, crime, politics, but like sad stories, or in the news world, we often hear if it bleeds, it leads. So that means that it has, the beginning of a newscast if it's something crazy happening, right? I really wanted to do also showcase positive stories. And during the pandemic, which is when a lot of content creators started really taking off, that's also when I decided to start sharing these positive stories on TikTok, and the rest is history.
There you go. And that tells you how thirsty we all were for good stories, right? I mean, you took off with good stories. You didn't, the bleed didn't lead really in your case and in others, other content creators' case. We needed to know the good stories. And Chris, you're right on point because I got to tell you, we have all the data that supports everything that you just said. We have a report, as you know, we have a report that we do every year. Now we're doing it twice a year. And we show that Latinos, first of all, in English media have been invisible. And second, most of the roles, of the very few roles that we get, are negative. The worst is when we're criminals and we're abusers and we're bad people. And the truth is that we have very low criminality in our community. The American cities in the border are the safest, right? The big crime exists in Detroit and Baltimore and all these other cities where Latinos are actually not even present in so many ways. And so everything that you're saying is true, because how come we don't have the story of Chris or the story of Ana or the story of any of the people that you and I know that have great stories that should be told, and they're not told because we are not criminals, right? And we're lucky, and we never want to be criminals. But there is a big misinterpretation of who we are because of that. Anglo people get to tell all their stories, right? You see the story of the criminal that is Anglo, but you also see the story of the mother that is Anglo, of the reporter that is Anglo, of the business leader that is Anglo, the activist that is Anglo, the same with other communities. But in the case of Latinos, we don't see that, big, spectrum of who we are. We only see the negative part. And that, amounts for a lot of the stereotyping, a lot of the movement of anti-immigration, of the movement of deportation, right? I mean, you've seen it lately. You have been incredibly active and accurate covering that. Tell us about it, what you see as the movement, and then tell us what you're seeing in the streets in LA.
Before I do that, Ana, I didn't want to interrupt, but yes, people really need to know and get into their head the facts that you share in Latino Donor Collaborative.
Thank you.
And yes, it's a reality that border towns are one of the safest places.
Exactly.
Immigrants are scared to commit crime.
Exactly.
That's why we have low levels. Most immigrants are here to work, literally here to work.
Exactly.
So I mean, it's sad, but it's the reality that people misinterpret that.
Misinterpret or do they gaslight us, Chris?
I don't know.
Is it an intentional gaslighting? Because how come it doesn't happen with any other community?
Yeah, that's something to be studied because it is interesting. But I like to be positive. I always like to think positive, and I just think that maybe we're too shy, too humble, and we don't talk about the good things about our community. We don't even talk about the good things about our countries, our Mexico, our Latin America, that has so much beauty, and not everywhere it's unsafe. Not everywhere is, terrible to go visit. No, it's like the United States. There's good areas, there's bad areas.
Exactly.
So, but even our immigrant community, they don't like to share that. They're scared, or I don't know what it is, but we don't share that. We have to showcase all the good stuff about our community and about our culture.
You're very nice, and you have a really good heart because you want to just give the benefit of the doubt. I am more pragmatic, if you may, not to say more suspicious. I do think that if we know these numbers, they know these numbers. I do think that somebody has to be the scapegoat, and in this era, we are being the scapegoated. In a lot of different ways, Hollywood is failing, and I'm not saying it because it's a perception, it's a fact, right? I mean, we measure all the shows and all the films, and we've seen a huge decrease, probably like to 40-50% some years compared to 4 or 5, 6 years ago. And as we know, 5 of the 6 big studios are half the size of what they used to be. Their market cap is also almost half what it used to be. Some of them are being bankrupted. We just saw last week that the alleged wonderful merger of Discovery and Warner Brothers has been a complete failure. They invested $72 billion in it. Today, it's valued in 14. So poor investors they must be devastated. Still, the CEO has a salary of $52 million a year. Anyway, all this to tell you that we see Hollywood failing, and we see this new media that you actually participate and are a leader in, which is social media, YouTube, in some places gaming, right? And it's because our community mainly, but also other communities, don't see themselves reflected. They don't see stories that they want to watch. They don't see innovation. And so it's going somewhere else. And you're part of that. If I know these numbers, if we do know these numbers, they know these numbers. And let me just one more point. I know I'm being intense about it, but let me tell you one more number. Of the very few roles that Latinos have in traditional media, I'm not going to say mainstream anymore, in traditional media, the very few that are positive are the biggest hits. So there are very few, but for example, two of the top shows of Netflix are Wednesday and Lincoln Lawyer. The top show of Disney today through the whole year has been Andor. You cannot get more Mexican than Diego Luna and his accent, right? The top show of Max is The Last of Us. There are 4 Latinos in the season this season, and it's the top show. Will Trend, the number 1 show of ABC. So this is the thing. If we are so successful as stories and as characters, how come they don't do more? This is why I tell you that's kind of strange, because if you told me, well, Latinos don't sell, people really don't like Salma Hayek, and they really don't like Pedro Pascal, and they really don't like Diego Luna, and they don't go crazy for Eva Longoria, I would say, okay, well, you're right. But they do go crazy for all of them. Yeah, the world, 100%. Forget about Americans only. The world goes crazy for them.
It's
right?
Totally true.
So
and I hate seeing that when they show a cast for most films, it's like, most of the characters, we know who they are. And it's like one Latino, one African American, one Asian maybe. But you know what I mean? It's not
totally.
Fair. It's not right. That needs to change.
It's not right.
I'm glad that you're being intense about it.
Look at Salma Hayek. She's tiny. She is, really dark, and she's gorgeous. And people just go crazy for her at her 50 years old. It's amazing. And she said it many times. She had to go, and she says it in a much nicer way. Her grace is incredible, but she says, I had to marry the richest man in France so that I was taken seriously in Hollywood. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That's kind of crazy. So that's kind of thing. But anyway.
And we love seeing Salma. We love seeing Eva Longoria. We love seeing all the ones, the pioneers, right?
Yeah.
But we also need to get new talent out there.
I agree.
They need to let us get through those doors.
Yes, absolutely. You and I were lucky enough last week to be with one of those, Becky G. Mm-hmm. What a power of nature is that young girl, gorgeous girl, talented girl, incredibly proud of who she is, proud of her family, where she comes from, killing it, right?
Absolutely,
it's like those are the people.
She's tiny but has this huge star power, and she's so connected and proud of our culture and our roots. Exactly. I love to see it. I love to see it. And
I love
when you continue supporting people like that.
Absolutely.
Like that.
And you know what? Just for the audience that didn't know, Chris and I were so lucky because I didn't know this, by the way. Becky G is co-owner of the LA football team, women football team. So she's incredibly powerful, right? Not only because of that, but because of a number of things. But she stood up and she said, guess what? You need to do something. And they renamed that game that we were invited to share with her the Immigrant Game.
So the team is Angel City Football Club. It was Immigrant City Football Club.
Exactly.
And she was like, if not the first, one of the first teams in LA to speak
The first.
up.
The first.
That's incredible.
She's amazing. I
She
mean, a
gets her
young
flowers for
girl,
that. Yeah.
right? A young girl with this power, with this leadership that just changed. And I don't know if you saw that, but after, because when we were there, I didn't see it. I learned the next day. So the head coach, the head player, the manager, everybody did a statement about how this team was all for Latinos and all for immigrants, and they have our back. And that's what we need to see. And it was all because of her.
And she wasn't afraid of losing fans or losing something, because I feel like a lot of these teams are not talking or not standing up for our community because they fear they're going to lose money. But they're not realizing that the Latino fans are the huge fan base that is supporting these teams. And it's LA. How is it that we have so many teams in this region and only a few are doing something for this craziness, right?
I think we should start sending a message. I think our voice is part of the power of our pocket is, part of our voice, and we should reward, Becky G's team, and then, make sure that the other teams know. We saw that they didn't stood up. They didn't have the guts. And I don't know if you saw the Dodgers went through a really embarrassing situation with the, with the singer wanting to sing in Spanish and not being allowed and still singing in Spanish. But then the next day, ICE came to somebody at the Dodgers called ICE. And that should be unearthed to see who was that person. But they weren't allowed in, which was a good step, but small step. They need to do much more, because team specifically lives from the Latino community.
Yeah. The Dodgers, they said they were going to invest like $1 million. But I feel like, I'm sorry,
$1 million is nothing for them. They should invest. And plus, I want to know how. Because, if it's with the friends of somebody doing, a big fundraiser and, most of that money goes to the cost of the event, like, no, that doesn't work for me.
Yeah. So shout out to Becky G, because she's, a queen for doing what she did and calling everyone out, because she called them out on her social media. And then she had us there. She invited us to that game, to that announcement of Immigrant City. That was
how great was to be with
you,
her.
Becky G.
I know, we adore her. It's like she's my idol, and plus she's gorgeous, and plus it was so much fun, and so proud of having young people like her in our community, because that's what we need. And then we have another one today, and it's not as young actually, but that really stood up last night, right, with Jimmy Kimmel, Diego Luna, just taking over the hosting of the show and starting by just being completely blunt. He had no pelos en la lengua, like we say in Spanish. Like, he just went off.
Yeah. I haven't finished watching his that segment he had, but the monologue, but I feel like he really that was powerful. That was great. Because with his accent, he didn't care, and he even said that he was funny, but he was serious.
He took probably 15 minutes to say who he is and why he was there, and how he was going to use that speakerphone, and how important immigrants are, and how cruel it is to be deporting kids and separating families. And going back to your point, Chris, that some teams thought that it could act against them. They're wrong. On the contrary.
Totally.
It would, tell Martin Luther King that, and he'll tell you, on the contrary, when you stand up for people that, are being abused, you actually get more followers, you get more customers, and you win.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. I hope more celebrities do what Becky G and Diego Luna and Nessa are doing, because they're making a powerful statement. Yeah.
And then going back to you, because you're a leader, as I said many times in this podcast, and I've told you before, tell me For example, how did you get, because we talked a little bit with Peggy G, she told us, we've talked to other leaders also, but tell me how did you get to be a multi-Emmy winning, newscaster? How did you accomplish what you did? I get my news of what's happening on the streets from you lately because you're just in. And tell us, how did you get there? How did you get your crew in the streets and started interviewing everybody and catching moments that are really touching? And I remember seeing the first and at the very beginning with the marches, I saw that you were actually capturing how these marches were not violent. On the contrary, it was a family celebration with people dancing and eating and the kids, holding hands. And it was actually a celebration, a peaceful celebration.
Yeah, considering that there was so many protests, the violent incidents were minor because most of these demonstrations were completely peaceful, completely fun, just getting that message across in support of the immigrant community, against ICE. But most of the protests were completely peaceful. I went to one in Downey where we met, Ana, before we went to Becky G.
I loved it.
That day it was a beautiful thing. Lots of families, lots of kids just saying that they're speaking up for those that can't speak because they don't have a voice, they don't have papers. They're speaking up for their parents and grandparents that did so much for them to be able to speak up and have, great careers, great jobs because of all that hard work, of the immigrant parents. Absolutely. So they were dancing, Caballo Dorado, of course. We love being, our culture is colorful and fun. Yeah. How can you not love us, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one thing that I noticed also when we met there is that there were probably half of the people were Latinos, but half of them were not. There were a lot of, Anglos and a lot of African American. But it's not a city, but it was very interesting. We had a lot of allies, I call them, right? Just standing up for us and saying, immigrants are great. We are all for immigrants.
And, I think that has to do because Latinos, we stand up also for other people when they need it. Like we don't really look at color. Latinos are all, we're everywhere. This is LA. So if we see an injustice, doesn't matter what their culture or what their demographic is, most Latinos help. We're good people that like to help and speak up and so I feel like that's why they're also returning the favor on that in that sense.
You're absolutely right. Remember with George Floyd, because of the fact that 50% of the city is Latino, most of the people in the George Floyd marches were Latinos. And, we were out there. I remember being in that street where somebody burned the car, which was a very bad idea. But I was there before and it was perfectly okay. It was a very nice street, 3rd Street in West Hollywood, which is always very peaceful and very nice. So, no, you're absolutely right. That's why we have allies. And, we've loved lately seeing a lot of celebrities and real important voices coming, out saying, hey, what's your problem? We all know an immigrant that has changed our life for good, that has taken care of our kids, that has made a business with us, that has, being a DJ, or like you always know a Latino around you that has really made your life better. And so a lot of people like that stepping up and talking about who we are. I want your opinion on something that I've noticed. And I can't be political because we're a nonprofit, but I'm going to just describe something. Mm-hmm. I remember that when President Trump announced his first run, he went down the stairs and said that Mexicans were rapists and criminals. And I remember thinking, oh my God, what's going to happen after 4 years if this is his discourse, right? Like if this is what he's going to be talking about. What would be our surprise that at the end of his administration, actually, because we do polling, right, very often, at the end of his administration, we actually have more support from Anglos than ever before. And we believe that it's because he really spoke so ill about a community that was our community, that people really noticed there was something else rather than just facts behind what he was talking about. And that goes back to the allies that are showing up in our marches now. I think people are saying, you know what, this is not normal. There is hate somewhere there. And I'm not saying that the president is hateful or not, but we know that the people within his administration that are promoting this, some of them from LA, and you and I probably know, not to say names, but some of them from LA that are just full of hate. It's very targeted. It's very obvious, but it's interesting. I think we are lucky in a lot of different ways that when people are so biased, we actually get allies that are, good-hearted and people that know the reality of who we are.
Well, that inappropriate comment that you just mentioned is actually what got me started doing TikToks, I think.
No way.
If I remember right.
Wow.
It was during that time when all this was a conversation, like if Mexicans were criminals and rapists. I was like, what? Because I come from like a very proud Mexican mother that always tells me, like, even before President Trump, before anything, growing up, she would always tell me, like, somos los más trabajadores, we're the most hardworking, we're, all our beautiful blessings that we have.
Yeah.
And so when I would hear something like that, it's like, what? That's not
exactly
accurate. That's not accurate at all. So I said, okay, hold on. Let me start sharing these stories that I know of all these Mexican American or Mexican immigrant graduating, doing big things, big moves, becoming CEOs. I mean, just beautiful stories that weren't heard of that much, and that are far from being criminals and rapists.
Absolutely, Chris. You were the first influencer that I saw doing that. And I know now you started a trend, which is a blessing. Thank you for starting a trend. But you were the first one. I remember seeing your beautiful face saying, like, hey, did you know that? And like all this excitement that you were sharing with all these stories of, like, the Mexican kid winning the global mathematic contest, or all these incredible things that you constantly share with us. Tell us, how did you come up with that idea? Because honestly, and for the audience to know, I'm a huge TikTok follower, and I do know that Chris started this trend in the Latino community.
I don't know. I think I might have, because I started just doing it, like you said, with this emotion, this excitement, and I did it during that time, during the pandemic, when I was listening to these comments, and I wanted to show those positive stories about my community, and the response from other, TikTokers or my followers. I started getting a lot of followers, a lot of reposts, they loved those TikToks. Mm-hmm. So I said, oh my God, I have to continue. And I did. But honestly, there's just so many stories that I don't have enough time. I wish I could. I wish I had like a team of just like being able to share and like helping me like write or produce these. But it's like, there's just so many. But I share some, and those go viral, and I love that. That means that people want to listen to that, and they're proud of it. But we're not seeing it, like we said, on traditional media. So that's how,
because that's another thing that you do. You do it in such a gracious and elegant way.
Thank you.
You really do. So I can see how you're saying that it takes production, time and effort and investment, because your posts are very nice.
Thank you. And I think that's also, it's important for any TikToker. If you want to get a message out there, you have to do it with a passion. It's got to be something that really, you're passionate about, because I feel like the viewers or followers, I don't know, somehow they know it. They know if it's genuine, if it's authentic, if it's really, if you're being transparent. Like, if you're just posting something that you think is going to be, viral, it's not going to happen. You really have to like enjoy that.
Yeah, I mean? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it can, you show it, you transmit it 100%. I love how you do it. And I remember when you started sharing those things, I was like, oh, we gotta help him, find other stories. And I used to send you like stories from my little, anonymous, account. But then I love hearing that what I actually knew in afterwards, which is that, you have too many. There's so many successful stories like that. And that's, we go back to the media, right? Why aren't they telling those stories? But anyway, but yes, we have so many. We create, we change, we transform, we embetter this country, and our countries in Latin America, in the world. And that's what you do so well, which is using your social platform to show those stories, that we're not seeing, produced in traditional media.
Yeah, thank you. And I mostly focus on the Mexican community and showing those stories. But can you imagine if I also focused on other Latino stories that are positive?
Yeah.
I just wouldn't have enough time and breath, and it's so
Forget
many.
it. Yes,
I know.
there's so many. But I always love this story of the lovely gardener that arrived here. You're right, and with nothing, and still is undocumented, but has 4 kids that are going to UCLA. The oldest one is, entering Disney at the marketing department, and it's the American dream, right? He's still undocumented. He's still a gardener. He has 4 gardeners working for him, which is fantastic. Now he has a company, but he's been able to give this incredible American dream to his kids, and the kids obviously delivered. As your mom well said, we are hard workers. From the time we're born, we're hard workers. So. We honestly are a gift for this country. And we've been here forever, Chris. You and I know. I mean, we're not a recent gift to this country. We were this country before it was this country.
Yeah, if you want to get historical, yes, it's true.
Right?
Yes.
Like in the case, my husband and my husband's family came here in the 1570s. It's documented, to the area of New Mexico. They started, marrying, indigenous, people, and they created who we are, which is Latinos, right? We're a mix in a lot of different ways. And they've been here since that time and before. And so, they were Mexicans, and then suddenly the United States took over all those states, which is, a large part of the United States, probably the richest part of the United States, and they became American. But they were Mexican, and they were here before it was the United States.
Ana, and something that isn't really talked about, and hope it's not controversial, but if you think about it, like Mexicans, most of us have indigenous roots.
Yes,
And
100%.
indigenous means Native American. So
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, but we literally have been here generations
Ex-
before any, colonization or anything became what is currently United States, Mexico, whatever. Like our families go way back. Have some
Absolutely.
respect.
Absolutely. This is the part. And you're right. It may be controversial, but I would say, I think there's a statistic that says that 95% of Mexicans have both, right? In different degrees, but Spanish, European from different places, and indigenous. And that's what makes us, I used to have a very good friend that was a doctor at UCLA, and he said, that's why you Mexicans are so healthy. Because you're a mix of genes, and the more mixed, the healthier. That's a statistic. That's science. So I didn't know that, but he told me that. He said that's science, right? And so, yeah, you're right. And we've been here from forever. I always joke, and my kids used to hate this joke, but now they love it, that, the states that are in Spanish are not in Spanish because the British people say, "Hey, Mexicans, come here and name the states." They can't. They're in Spanish because these were empires before they even became the United States. There were global trade routes that went through California all the way to Europe from Asia, right? And so Los Angeles, UCLA was founded even before this was the United States. So. Florida, Texas, Nuevo Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, California, Oregon, Montana, right? All those are names in Spanish, and it's not a coincidence why. And so, yeah.
Ana, one thing I fear, and I hope I don't give anyone any ideas, But you know how they changed Gulf of Mexico, you know? I hope it doesn't come to like, I hope nobody notices that we have a state, Nuevo Mexico.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, they're so not
Yeah,
thinking
imagine if
that
they
they
want to
don't.
change that. I do.
Te lo puedes imaginar que de repente they decide to translate the names, like instead of Colorado, it's going to be red. And instead of Arizona, will be like the arid, the dry zone. I mean, it's just it'll be too much. I gotta say, it'll be way too much. I think he got in enough trouble. I don't know if you know this, but the Mexican government is suing Google because Google actually changed the name on its map, and they said you don't have the right to change the name. The United States doesn't dictate what general common areas are named.
Yeah, and
And
that's
so
what maps around the world, it say Gulf of Mexico. So,
exactly
that change
everybody.
that President Trump or Trump's administration did was for like the American territory. So here they could call it Gulf of America, but internationally it's supposed to still maintain its name.
Absolutely. Google is the only large, organization that actually adopted it. Everybody else didn't. I mean, it's just kind of, and in Europe, they laugh so much about it. They use it as a joke. And this is the sad part that they are with us because they are also being subjected to, the Greenland, crazy idea and the, 51st state, Canada. And it's just kind of crazy. I heard today that I think the polling in Puerto Rico now it's all about independence. Like there's no interest in becoming a state anymore. I mean, they're like, no, 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 we want to be a country. I don't know. That's going to be interesting to see what happens. What would you tell? What advice would you give media, traditional media, given the bad fortune that they've been, trending in? What would you tell them based on the success that you've had with new media, with, current media, with the media that is updated and the new mainstream?
Social media is the present. It's no longer the future. It's the present. And they need to adapt to what social media is showing, is proving, that people wanna have access to different stories, not just crazy crime and sadness and stressful stories. We also need, a good share of positive stories, or true beauty and diversity and everything. TV is gonna become obsolete or something if they don't, adapt to these changes.
Absolutely. And you know what? I don't know if something that really bothers me constantly is like there is the same programming, number 9, number 10, number 11, like all these different shows and movies that they try to like reinvent. And the concept is completely obsolete and they try to reinvent it with a different cast and with a different spin. But they need new blood. They need, innovating people. They need us, quite frankly. They need Latinos. They need the Latino community. You know what happened with music 20 years ago when it became a democratic media thanks to, Apple Music and Pandora and Spotify, where we can actually choose what we listen to. Latinos took over. And not because we're better, not because I want to say that Latinos are the best only. I think all of us are amazing, but we were given the chance to express ourselves. And in a lot of different ways, we created trends. And if, that industry doesn't see that, they're going to end up with absolutely no audience.
Yeah, for sure. 100%.
Tell me what has been your most emotional story, the one that you've covered that you still remember and that kind of really touched you and maybe even transformed you.
There's many. It's sad to say, but I've covered many tragic stories that
Oh,
always leave me, when I'm talking about reporting news.
yeah. Yeah, 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 of course.
So, but honestly, right now, seeing all these ICE raids and covering some of them has, I would say, has marked me. It has transformed me in a way because I feel like I'm being a little more empathetic, I guess, or to our people, our workers that are out there because that's who's being detained a lot of the times, and we've seen it in video. It's our elotero, or our street vendors, tamales street vendors, gardeners. It's like, seeing that footage and seeing the testimonies, because I've been there in person and talking to the people that saw the ICE raid. It's just crazy how they're being treated. Like, it's so, inhumane. I understand if a criminal is like doing something, you gotta attack him and, tackle him. But most of these people are, they're older, or they're, just workers, literally working. So, that has changed me. I feel like,
Wow.
but I've covered so many stories in the past 18 years, like you told me, that it's like,
Like my staff said.
I've also learned to like kind of not let it get to me, because
Yeah,
I would go crazy. I would just not,
absolutely. No, I agree with you. And you know what I would tell those people that are working for ICE, or even the head of, Homeland Security, and, the person close to Trump that is driving this anti-immigration movement? I would say that community, specifically the Latino community, which was the most important community with this wave of immigration, starting the end of the last century, I would say they created an economy of $4 trillion. Would you be so stupid as to want them to leave? Because not only they are incredibly powerful, even if they're only, as they may want to see them, gardeners, or maybe people that are, in jobs that are less recognized, but they have kids that are actually now American. They are going to school. Their first language is English. They're motivated. We've seen it in all the reports that we do. We've seen it in all of our social media. These kids are outspoken, motivated, ambitious. They have all the tools that anybody needs in this country. And they remember what their parents went through. They remember the sacrifices their parents did for them, and they're in this world to make sure that sacrifice is worth it. Why would you ever want to get rid of that community? It's like the Mexican president said, send me my Mexicans. Please, I beg you. I mean, that's a treasure, There was a joke in Mexico when all this started. And I don't know if it's true or not, but that the president was actually getting calls, like from European countries saying, hey, if you don't want those deported people, could you send them this way? Because, of course, these people are now bilingual, bicultural, much more sophisticated. They have a trade. They build credit. They build savings. Why would you not want those people working for you and in your country, right?
Yeah.
So I would say when you see those stories, I think we should remind everybody from within our community and outside, these are the people you're deporting. That's really stupid. That's like shooting yourself on the foot.
Yeah, and you just said it, Ana. Like, those are the people that created one of the largest economies in the world.
Thank you.
Latinos are
The fifth largest economy in the world.
that's
Yes.
wow.
Crazy.
Period.
Exactly. Thank you. That's crazy. I mean, like, who would want to get rid of them? It's just completely self-defeating, in terms of how can your racism be so hollow and so stupid, right? That you would like to just get rid of them because they are different from you. It's just silly. But anyway, okay. Again, I could talk with you forever, but last question. Ahora sí, last question. Okay, you became who you are because you started as a journalist, then you used, social media, and then you've gathered all this possibility. And of course, your passion, Chris, because as our audience has seen, and I've seen since the day I met you, you're very passionate about what you do. What is your advice for young Latinas and Latinos that are seeking to follow your path and that want to also use their microphone, not only to get money, not only to get famous, but to make a difference, to do what you're doing?
Mm-hmm. I would say to be passionate, to be authentic. You have to be original, be yourself. Who cares if they think you're cringy? Because honestly, I was shy in the beginning, and I'm pretty sure people thought I was cringy. I remember people saying that's cringe. but you have to get over that, get your message across. And something I learned from traditional media, and I'm very, grateful for all the years that I worked in, regular TV stations. But something I learned, and I do consider very important for all content creators on social media, is verify your facts. Go to Latino Donor Collaborative, check the sources, check the information, because there's a lot of disinformation, and we don't want to spread that. Fake news is everywhere, and we have to be very, very vigilant and focused on sharing, actual facts. So I would say that's important. Yeah.
Drop the mic, Chris.
Mic drop.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I feel like that's
exactly
that's something I've really done, and that's why people also trust what I'm saying, because I learned that you have to really triple check your sources and your information before you put it out there. And also, we're human. We're not AI yet. Artificial intelligence is not in TikTok as much yet. Hasn't replaced us. So we might have a mistake, but correct it. Add a little comment, add a little disclosure. Okay, this changed. That's okay too.
Absolutely.
But try to be very, very, very careful with that.
That's part of your credibility, to make mistakes and, fix it. I agree. I agree with you. Chris, thank you so much for giving us 1 hour of your time. I know that you're so busy. Everybody wants you. I am so proud of everything that you're doing. We're so grateful. I hope this is not the last time we have you here. And please keep doing the work you do. We need you. You inspire us every day. And till the next one.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Ana. You're a fregona. I really hope that people know who you are now that you have a public profile on IG. Ana Valdez Official. Go follow her, because you really do. You're doing an amazing job with the LDC and, showcasing content creators like us that are kind of trying to do something for our community. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you for your kind words. And again, thank you for everything you do. You're my idol. And I look forward to the next one.
Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you.